The autumn in Boston was breathtakingly beautiful. The trees along the Charles River had turned red and yellow, glistening in the morning light. Eleanor Parker had no time to appreciate such scenery as she hurried toward the entrance of the Boston Museum of Contemporary Art as usual. Eleanor was respected by her colleagues as a curator in the museum's contemporary sculpture department for her knowledge and keen aesthetic sense. Her slender frame suited the power suit she inherited from her father Thomas, and her neatly styled brown hair and intellectual expression made her a recognizable figure in the art world. As she opened the glass doors to the museum, Eleanor's smartphone rang in the lobby. The screen displayed "Mom," and she hesitated for a moment before answering. "Good morning, Mom. I'm sorry, I just arrived at the museum." A glamorous, slightly high-pitched voice came from the other end. "Eleanor, you remember about dinner on Friday, don't you? Audrey is coming back to Boston too, so it'll be a family gathering after a long time." Eleanor sighed quietly. "Of course I remember. I promised to be at the Brookline house at 7, didn't I?" "Wonderful. And I need you to sign some company documents. Can you bring them?" Eleanor replied, "All right," as she entered her office. After hanging up, she sat at her desk and gazed out the window. It had been 11 months since her father Thomas passed away. The inheritance issues had created cracks in their seemingly harmonious family relationship. Thomas had achieved success in real estate development in the Boston suburbs, and Parker Real Estate was a household name in the area. While alive, he had always said, "The business belongs to the whole family," yet he left Eleanor the management rights and the majority of assets. "The meeting about the new exhibition starts in 10 minutes. Her assistant Jennifer peeked in, bringing Eleanor back to reality. She nodded and picked up some documents. In her mind, museum work and family issues were constantly intertwined. That night, Eleanor stood in her apartment kitchen with a glass of wine, looking out at the Boston skyline. A text message arrived from her sister Audrey. "Looking forward to tomorrow night." Eleanor smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. Her relationship with Audrey had been complicated since childhood. Her sister was talented, beautiful, and sociable, while Eleanor was introverted and immersed in art. After their father's death, these differences became even more pronounced. The following evening, Eleanor parked her car in front of her mother's house. The white colonial-style home in the quiet Brookline neighborhood was where she had grown up. As she opened the door, her mother Vivian's perfume and the pleasant aroma of something roasting wafted from inside. "Eleanor, welcome." Vivian's perfect blonde hairstyle and sophisticated attire epitomized New England's upper class. She hugged Eleanor and kissed her cheek. "I made your father's favorite roast beef." In the dining room, Audrey was waiting with a glass of wine. She resembled their mother more than Eleanor did, with blonde hair and clean-cut features. Having just graduated from law school, Audrey had recently started working at a law firm in New York. Audrey stood up and hugged Eleanor. "It's been a while. New York is so busy, I haven't been able to come back much." The three sat at the table, and Vivian poured wine. "The house feels empty without Thomas," she said. "But we have to move forward." Eleanor nodded quietly. "Yes, Mom." "So, how's the company?" Audrey asked. There was a subtle tension in her voice. Eleanor took a sip of wine before answering. "It's going well. A new development project is starting in Brighton." "That's wonderful," Vivian's voice carried a hint of sarcasm. "Thomas would be delighted to see his company thriving under your management." Eleanor met her mother's eyes. She could sense the dissatisfaction hidden behind Vivian's smile. Before her father died, her mother hadn't been deeply involved in running the company. But after the inheritance details were revealed, she suddenly began claiming her rightful share as a co-manager. "By the way, did you bring the company documents?" Vivian asked. Eleanor took the papers from her bag. Here they are. But Mom, this isn't just a formality. Signing this will finalize the sale of the North End property. Yes, I know, Vivian waved her hand dismissively. That property has always been troublesome. We're better off selling it quickly. Eleanor frowned. But that district has potential. I don't think it's wise to sell now. Audrey sighed. Eleanor, you're always too cautious. You can't get big returns without taking risks. You have the management rights, Eleanor. Vivian placed her hand over her daughter's. But this was built by your father and me together. I'd like you to listen to our family's opinions too. Eleanor nodded silently. She didn't say it aloud, but she had recently discovered something. After her father's death, when she examined the company's finances closely, she found several suspicious transactions and money flows, even though everything looked healthy on the surface. She had planned to discuss this tonight, but seeing her mother and sister's attitudes, she felt it wouldn't be wise. I understand, Mom. But let me consider it a bit more. Vivian pressed her lips together but said nothing. Audrey changed the subject and began talking about her new life in New York. The meal proceeded pleasantly on the surface, but an unspoken tension hung between the three of them. As she was leaving, Audrey looked at Eleanor's car and said, "Isn't it time you got a new car? How many years have you been driving this one?" 5 years, Eleanor answered. It still works fine. But doesn't the brake sound strange? Audrey tilted her head. Isn't it dangerous to drive this on the highway? Thanks for your concern, Eleanor forced a smile. I was thinking about taking it in for maintenance soon anyway. On her way home, Eleanor thought about Audrey's words. She did feel that the brakes had been behaving differently lately. She decided to take it to the repair shop tomorrow. The next morning, Eleanor got into her car intending to head to the museum. When she turned the key, the engine started as usual, but she sensed something was off. While backing out of the garage, when she pressed the brake pedal, it sank deeper than normal. That's strange. She tried the brakes again. They definitely weren't working properly. Audrey's words flashed through her mind, isn't it dangerous to drive this on the highway? Eleanor called the museum to say she'd be a little late. Then she headed to her regular repair shop, Mike's Auto Repair. Fortunately, morning traffic was light, and she was able to drive slowly and carefully. Mike's Auto Repair was located in an industrial area a little way from downtown. The founder, Mike Ramirez, was a familiar face from when Eleanor used to come with her father. Eleanor, it's been a while. Mike greeted her, wiping his oil-stained hands. What's the matter? Good morning, Mike. My brakes aren't working well. I didn't notice until yesterday, but this morning they suddenly seem less effective. Mike nodded and took her keys. Let's take a look. Have some coffee while you wait. Eleanor was checking her emails on her smartphone while drinking coffee in the waiting room. About 30 minutes later, Mike returned. His expression was dark, with a frown between his eyebrows. Eleanor, can you come with me for a minute? With a feeling of unease, she followed Mike to the workshop. Her car was lifted, with the tires removed. Look, Mike pointed under the car. This is the brake system. Normally, brake pads would be installed here. Eleanor peered closer. Is there a problem? Mike said with a serious expression, the brake pads have been removed. To be precise, there are signs they were deliberately removed. What? Eleanor asked in disbelief. There's no doubt, Mike nodded. This isn't an accident or worn-out parts. Someone deliberately removed the brake pads. It's not something that can be done without specialized knowledge. Eleanor's mind went blank. Who would? Did anyone else have access to your car recently? Mike asked quietly. This is no joke. If you had needed to brake suddenly on the highway, you would have lost control. It could have caused an accident, a serious one. Eleanor tried to remember. Recently. I just went to my mother's house yesterday. But I don't think anyone touched my car. Mike folded his arms. Eleanor, this isn't just a maintenance issue. Someone may have deliberately created a dangerous situation. You might want to report this to the police. Eleanor was too shocked to speak. Who would tamper with her car? And for what purpose? Mike, can you fix it right away? Of course. I have the parts, so it should take about an hour. But Eleanor. Mike placed a hand on her shoulder. Has anything unusual happened with your car? Do you have a dashcam? Eleanor shook her head. Come to think of it, I installed a dashcam from my father's old car last month. But I haven't checked if it's working properly. Let's take a look. Mike headed toward her car. A small camera was mounted on the upper part of the windshield. Mike removed it and took out the SD card. We can check this in the office. They moved to the office, and Mike inserted the SD card into the computer. Let's look at the recent footage. Eleanor held her breath as she stared at the screen. When Mike opened the files, the first thing that appeared was footage from last night when she parked in front of her mother's house. Eleanor could be seen getting out of the car, and then nothing happened for a while. This is after I went inside, Eleanor explained. Mike fast-forwarded. About 2 hours later, there was movement in the footage. Vivian and Audrey came out of the house and approached Eleanor's car. This is... Eleanor murmured. The footage showed Vivian looking around while Audrey opened the car door. The audio was also recorded, and their conversation could be heard. Hurry. Eleanor will still be in there for about an hour, Vivian's voice. I know, Mom, Audrey replied. The tools. In the back seat. The footage continued, showing Audrey opening the hood and her mother bringing a toolbox. The two crawled under the car and worked on something. About 15 minutes later, they reappeared. Perfect, Audrey said. Now the plan will proceed as expected. If there's a serious accident, everything will be taken care of. Vivian's voice had a coldness to it. Dad's inheritance and the company will all be ours. Audrey clapped her hands and laughed. Eleanor froze. She couldn't believe her eyes and ears. Her mother and sister were trying to kill her. For the inheritance. Mike was also speechless. Eleanor, this is... Eleanor stood up from her chair and looked out the window. A storm of emotions swirled within her, shock, betrayal, fear, and anger. She never imagined her family would go this far. Mike, can you make a copy of this SD card? Her voice was surprisingly calm. Of course, Mike quickly began making a copy. Eleanor, you should go to the police. This is attempted murder. Eleanor took a deep breath. Yes, but there's something I need to do first. Mike looked at her with concern. What do you mean? Can you fix the car? Eleanor asked. And please don't tell anyone. I can, but... Mike hesitated. What are you planning? A determined look appeared in Eleanor's eyes. I'm going to make my mother and sister understand the gravity of what they've done. Don't do anything dangerous, Mike said worriedly. I'll be fine, Eleanor smiled. While Mike was repairing the car, Eleanor sat quietly thinking in the repair shop's office. Various emotions were swirling in her head, but she maintained a surprising calmness. The repair is complete, Mike returned to the office. I replaced the brake pads with new ones and refilled the brake fluid. It's in perfect working order now. Thank you, Mike. Eleanor stood up and took out her wallet. Be careful, Mike said with concern. Are you sure you don't want to go to the police? Eleanor smiled. Not yet. But with a copy of this SD card, I can go anytime. Mike shook his head. Please, just don't do anything dangerous. Don't worry. You fixed the car perfectly, right? Absolutely. Eleanor thanked Mike and informed the museum she wouldn't be coming in today. Then she returned home and calmly began formulating a plan. That evening, Eleanor called her mother. Eleanor, what is it? Vivian's voice showed no change. She sounded as calm as if she hadn't tried to kill her daughter the day before. I just had an idea, Eleanor said in a cheerful voice. How about going to the mountain cottage this weekend? The three of us. There was a moment of silence on the other end. That's sudden. Did something happen? No, just. I feel like our family time has decreased since Dad passed away. I want us to spend more time together. I see. There was hesitation in Vivian's voice. All right, I'll ask Audrey. Thanks, Mom. I'll drive. Oh, are you sure? How's your car? There was a slight tension in Vivian's voice. Eleanor replied calmly, well, there are a few concerns, but it's fine. It can make it to the mountains. The next morning, Eleanor parked her car in front of her mother's house. When she knocked on the door, Audrey appeared. As always, she had perfect makeup and refined clothing, and she smiled at Eleanor. Big sis, good morning. It was a sudden plan, but I think it's a great idea. Eleanor hugged her sister. In her arms, she felt a small tremor. Audrey seemed nervous. Where's Mom? She's making final preparations, Audrey pointed inside the house. She should be out soon. A few minutes later, Vivian appeared. Eleanor, thank you for the lovely idea. I'm looking forward to our first family trip in a while. The three got into the car. Eleanor in the driver's seat, Vivian in the passenger seat, and Audrey in the back. Eleanor observed Audrey's face in the rearview mirror. Her sister was looking out the window, seemingly lost in thought. Let's get going, Eleanor started the engine. It takes about 2 hours to the cottage, but the scenery is beautiful, so you won't be bored. The car left Boston and headed toward the suburbs. The conversation was peaceful on the surface, but there was a subtle tension in her mother and sister's voices. By the way, Eleanor said casually, my car has been acting a bit strange lately. Looking in the rearview mirror, she saw Audrey stiffen for a moment. Vivian's profile also hardened. In what way? Vivian asked, pretending to be calm. The brakes feel odd. When I press them, they're not as effective as usual. Why don't you take it to a repair shop? Audrey's voice had risen slightly. Eleanor answered while keeping her eyes on the road, yes, I might go when we get back. The conversation broke off there. The atmosphere in the car grew heavy, and the three were lost in their own thoughts. After driving for about an hour, the road gradually turned into a mountain path. There were more curves, and in some sections, beyond the guardrails were deep cliffs. We're approaching a section with steep curves, Eleanor said. Dad always drove carefully here. Vivian looked out the window and said anxiously, Eleanor, could you slow down a bit? It's fine, Mom, Eleanor answered gently. I've driven this route many times in this car. The first sharp curve came into view. Eleanor deliberately increased her speed. Eleanor. Vivian raised her voice. You're going too fast, brake. Eleanor pretended to press the brakes. Oh? The brakes. What? What happened? Audrey's voice came from the back seat. It was mixed with fear. The brakes aren't working. Eleanor raised her voice, acting panicked. What should I do? It won't stop. The car was approaching the curve. Vivian screamed, and Audrey clutched her seatbelt. Their faces had turned pale. Eleanor. Do something! Vivian shouted. At the last moment, Eleanor pressed the brakes hard and turned the wheel. The car perfectly navigated the curve and passed safely. However, she continued the act. They're not working, the brakes aren't working. She cleared the next curve in the same way. Eleanor was calmly controlling the car, but her mother and sister were in a state of panic. Vivian was digging her nails into the seat, and Audrey was trembling with tears in her eyes. Eleanor, please, do something, Audrey said in a voice close to crying. I'm trying. Eleanor shouted back. But the brakes, they're not working at all. This terror act continued for several minutes. After passing the third curve, the road widened slightly, and the slope became gentler. Eleanor slowly decelerated the car and finally pulled over to the side of the road. Silence dominated the car. Vivian and Audrey seemed unable to recover from the shock. They were both trembling, their faces ashen. Eleanor turned off the engine and unfastened her seatbelt. Then she slowly turned toward the two. Her expression changed, becoming calm and severe. Were you scared? She asked quietly. Vivian and Audrey were speechless. The person who removed the brake pads must have been even more frightened. The blood drained from their faces. Vivian opened her mouth, but no words came out. Eleanor took an SD card from the glove compartment and held it in her palm. This is the dashcam recording. It clearly shows the two of you removing the brake pads from my car. You said, if there's a serious accident, everything will be taken care of, didn't you, Mom? Vivian covered her mouth with her hand. Audrey let out a small groan in the back seat. Actually, this car was repaired yesterday, Eleanor said calmly. We're heading to the police station now. Vivian and Audrey's faces turned ashen, and the car was enveloped in a heavy silence. Eleanor held the SD card tightly, observing their reactions. The police. Audrey finally spoke. Her voice was trembling. Eleanor, please, listen. What should I listen to? Eleanor's voice was as cold as ice. The reason you tried to kill me. The process by which you concluded that family can be killed for an inheritance. Vivian covered her face with trembling hands. That's not it, Eleanor. There are circumstances. What circumstances could justify a mother trying to kill her daughter? Before you go to the police, let us explain, Vivian desperately pleaded. Afterward, you can still decide whether to go to the police, can't you? Eleanor exhaled deeply. She turned off the car's engine completely and adjusted her seat to face them. Fine. Let's talk here. Tell me everything. Vivian took a small handkerchief from her handbag and pressed it to the corners of her eyes. Eleanor, we're in financial trouble. What? Eleanor frowned. Parker Real Estate is stable. And Dad's inheritance. That's not true, Vivian said painfully. Your father had secrets. Audrey leaned forward from the back seat and said, Mom, I'll explain. Sis, Dad had been driving the company into a crisis during the 2 years before he died. There's a huge debt. Eleanor listened in disbelief. What debt? The financial reports showed. The figures looked good on paper, Audrey continued. But Dad was addicted to gambling. He lost millions of dollars in underground casinos in Boston. Vivian nodded. Thomas was too proud. He never consulted anyone and kept hiding the problems. He misappropriated company funds and made risky investments. Even so, why would you? Eleanor choked on her words. After Dad died, creditors started appearing one after another. Vivian's voice grew smaller. Not just legal debts, but also from loan sharks. They threatened us. Why didn't you consult me? Eleanor asked, suppressing her anger. I have the management rights to the company. We were ashamed, Vivian wiped her tears. Besides, you seemed busy with your museum work. That still doesn't justify trying to kill me. Eleanor's voice rose. We were truly desperate, Audrey explained frantically. The creditors were trying to seize the company's assets. We thought the insurance money would help pay off the debts. So you thought killing me would solve the problem? Anger flared in Eleanor's eyes. We were foolish, Vivian bowed her head. Fear and desperation clouded our judgment. The car was again enveloped in silence. Only the sound of mountain wind hitting the windows could be heard. Eleanor slowly opened her mouth. What's the total amount of debt? Vivian and Audrey exchanged glances. About $4.5 million, Audrey answered. Eleanor closed her eyes. The amount far exceeded her imagination. What Dad had left behind wasn't just a luxurious house and company, but also an enormous debt. Why didn't you consult me? Eleanor asked quietly. We're family, aren't we? You always seem to live in your own world, Vivian said weakly. Art and museums were everything to you, and you didn't seem very interested in the family business. Dad always gave you special treatment, but he left the actual management to me and Audrey. Eleanor gave a bitter smile. Is that what you thought? Actually, I've been studying the company. While working at the museum, I've been taking online business courses. I had ideas for reforming the company. Audrey looked surprised. I didn't know. Of course not. No one ever asked me, Eleanor said calmly. I actually noticed something was wrong with the company's finances last month. But I didn't think it was this bad. Vivian asked, as if seeing a ray of hope, so, about the police. Eleanor looked at them with stern eyes. You tried to kill me. You realize this isn't just a family argument, right? We know, Audrey said in a small voice. We were hopelessly desperate. But that's no excuse. Eleanor, please, Vivian tried to take her daughter's hand, but Eleanor pulled away. Give us a chance. We'll do anything. Eleanor stared at the SD card for a long time, lost in thought. Various emotions were conflicting within her, anger at being betrayed, sadness, and strangely, love for her family still remained. I have conditions, she finally spoke. If you accept everything I'm about to say, I won't go to the police. Vivian and Audrey held their breath, listening. First, both of you must receive psychiatric counseling. Especially you, Mom. It's not normal to consider killing family members under any circumstances. Vivian silently nodded. Next, disclose all financial information about the company to me. Lists of debts, creditors, everything. No more secrets. Understood, Audrey replied. And cooperate fully in rebuilding the company. No more gambling or reckless investments. Follow the reconstruction plan I'll create. Both agreed. Finally, Eleanor took a deep breath. Both of you start community service. To understand the weight of what you tried to do. After a heavy silence, Vivian said in a small voice, You're a better person than us, Eleanor. If it were me, I might not have been able to forgive. Eleanor gripped the steering wheel. I didn't say I forgive you. It will take time to rebuild trust. But we're family. No matter what. Thank you, Audrey was in tears. For giving us a chance. Eleanor started the engine. Let's return to Boston. We have a long road ahead. As the car began descending the mountain, each of the three was lost in their thoughts. In Eleanor's heart, amidst anger and despair, a small light of hope had begun to glow. Rebuilding the family might be much harder than rebuilding the company. But she was prepared to accept that challenge. Welcome to Parker Real Estate's 40th anniversary celebration. Eleanor stood at a small podium, smiling at the gathered employees and business partners. A year had passed since that incident. "This past year has been a time of transformation for all of us," she continued in a calm voice. "We've overcome difficulties and been reborn as a stronger, better company." In the corner of the venue, Vivian stood holding a champagne glass. Her profile had softened compared to a year ago, and confidence had returned to her eyes. Weekly therapy sessions and volunteer work at the local women's shelter had changed her. Audrey was chatting with employees. Using the knowledge she gained in law school, she had established the company's legal department. She had shed her former arrogance and was working sincerely as a team member. "The three of us will lead this company, inherited from my father, into a new era," Eleanor nodded toward Vivian and Audrey. "Mother in real estate valuation, my sister in legal affairs, and myself in design and management strategy, each leveraging our strengths." As applause echoed through the venue, Eleanor reflected. The months after returning from the mountain road that day had been hellish. Tough negotiations with creditors, selling some company assets, and most difficult of all, rebuilding family trust. Every Sunday, the three participated in family counseling sessions. For the first few weeks, the room was filled with tension. Vivian and Audrey's guilt, Eleanor's anger and pain of betrayal. But over time, gradually, the three became able to truly exchange words. After the party, Eleanor drove the two in her newly purchased car toward the mountain road that had once been the stage of terror. "Are we really going?" Audrey asked, looking a bit anxious. "It'll be fine," Eleanor smiled. "I want to create good memories in that place." Upon arriving at the mountain cottage, the three drank wine on the terrace in the twilight, discussing future plans. "The sustainable low-income housing project can start next month," Vivian said. "The mayor is supporting us." Audrey showed drawings on her laptop. "All legal issues have been cleared. Eleanor, your design will be realized." Eleanor raised her wine glass. "To our new beginning." The three quietly toasted. As the sun set behind the mountains and the sky turned purple, Eleanor thought. Forgiving and forgetting are different. She would never forget her mother and sister's actions. But forgiveness had liberated her. By choosing reconstruction over revenge, she had found her own strength. The next morning, the three were descending the mountain road again. This time Eleanor was driving, Vivian in the passenger seat, and Audrey in the back seat. The same arrangement as a year ago, but the atmosphere in the car was completely different. "I have an idea for our next project," Eleanor said. "A collaborative studio and residence for artists." As her words continued, the car gently rounded a curve. The morning sun streaming through the windows announced the beginning of a new day.